Welcome to Whose Views. My name is Vicky Salazar.
And my name is Giulia Silverstein. Today we are joined by two UVA faculty members, Professor Gerald Warburg of the Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy and Mary Kate Cary of the College of Arts and Sciences.
Professor Cary teaches in the politics department in the college. She served as a speechwriter for George H.W. Bush, writing more than 100 presidential addresses. Here at UVA, she has taught courses such as political speechwriting and democracy out loud.
Professor Warburg is a professor of practice in the Batten School, and he spent much of his career on Capitol Hill serving as an assistant to Senate Majority Whip Alan Cranston. Professor Warburg has taught classes such as U.S. national security policymaking and the public policy challenges of the 21st century, a class Batten has offered online to hundreds of thousands of students. We are two students and two professors. The environment in the classroom is dependent on how comfortable we all are in sharing our views, yet some students feel afraid to voice their opinions for various reasons.
Let's focus on the political climate at universities, particularly in classrooms. You both teach and have taught small classes. In these classes, student participation and engagement is most pronounced. Have you noticed a shift in the past couple of years in the way students talk about controversial issues? And do you think students often don't fully express their beliefs or feel like they can't?
I guess we both teach small classes, but as soon as I got here to UVA, which is about 5 years ago, I was teaching political speechwriting and another class, Democracy Out Loud, which is the greatest speeches in American history. But I got pulled into co-teaching Election 2020 with a Democratic colleague who's the chair of the department. And so we taught it side by side, Republican and Democrat. And many of the students in that class who were Republicans or conservatives would come to my office hours privately and talk about the election with me because they didn't want to say it in front of their colleagues. They didn't really want their peers to know what their political views were. And so I've seen this from the start of my time here, so it has not changed for me because I've only been here 5 years and it's been going on pretty much the whole time. I don't know how you feel.
The problem's gotten worse as the country's gotten more polarized. I have found sort of a safe space here at the University of Virginia for having these conversations. But they're fraught, and I feel particularly pain for some of the more conservative students because of the divisions in the Republican Party and the danger of feeling socially ostracized if they gave a view that was deemed politically incorrect by their peers. But I think there are techniques for overcoming that as a classroom leader.
And are there particular topics that tend to generate more polarization or self-censorship in the classroom?
Yes, I think there are topics that are particularly fraught that have to do with gender identification, have to do with women's rights, that have to do with the grievances that certain groups in our society feel strongly, which frankly have been fueled by some of our political leaders who seek to exploit those grievances and differences rather than try to find ways to unite us. And I think that's something that members of both political parties are guilty of trying to divide us, to get their base out. And that is a challenge for professors in the classroom.
So I did a little research before I came to see you guys. And the FIRE survey that this year was released, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, had UVA number 6 in the country. But they surveyed, hundreds of thousands of students across the country, but several hundred here at UVA, and that went into our ranking. And according to those students who got surveyed, the topics that you're asking about, like what are the most polarizing ones, then were abortion, gun control, climate change, things that you could sort of predict. Knowing I was going to see you guys, I asked in class yesterday, what do you guys think would be the most polarizing thing if someone brought it up in class, would you be most uncomfortable with? And they said, what's going on in Israel with Hamas right now, and like you said, gender identification. Those were the two that were not on the FIRE survey, but are even more current, I think. So those would be the ones I'd list.
Do you believe it's possible for professors to remain politically neutral in their teaching? Or is some level of personal bias inevitable or even beneficial? How do you manage such biases when you are teaching?
Well, it depends on what class I'm teaching. So, for example, my class with the 25 or so greatest speeches in American history, I've literally counted to make sure there were just as many from one side as the other. And I really try to teach that right down the middle as much as I can, because there are great speeches on both sides. It's not that hard to talk in a positive way about a lot of the things that I don't necessarily agree with. But in the class election 24, which we'll be teaching this fall, absolutely part of my job is to talk about the conservative point of view and how the Republican nomination fight is going to go, and that's to the benefit of the students. But they're also hearing both sides, and they're going to hear the same thing from Professor Lawless. So it depends on the class, but in that class, absolutely, I have to express a viewpoint and be able to defend it.
I find that as a professor of practice who spent my career in policymaking and politics before I came to the academy, that the best way to handle this would be very honest with my students and right up front about some of the conclusions I've reached over the course of my career, but also to invite the counterfactual, to talk about my own journey and how I reached different conclusions, but constantly challenge them to be curious about people they disagree with, to tease out the values that we have in common with it. If we're all Americans, we're just arguing about tactics here. We have the same goals in common, which is a more perfect union. So I find being transparent about one's political background, but inviting in truly diverse points of view from a divided Republican Party, from a divided Democratic Party, so that students are exposed to different thought leaders who model, frankly, civil behavior in my classroom. I don't bring in screamers and inflammatory folks. I have hosted town halls here. We had very, very, very over-the-top heavy security for the one town hall we did have here for an incumbent congressman, and I don't wish to repeat that experience. But it was the right thing to do, to make sure that all points of view are heard, and the public university welcomes people of different points of view and makes them feel safe and comfortable when they talk about it.
How can educators, do you think, ensure that all perspectives are highlighted in the classroom? And how do you concern yourself with the political tensions between students? Do you believe it's your responsibility as an educator to address and mitigate polarization among students, or do you leave that to them and to navigate?
Curiosity is the most valuable emotion one can have in these types of exchanges. I do not feel it's up to the professors to sort out the relationships among students about their beliefs. I do think it's very important that we empower all the different voices in the classroom to be heard and to try to share the underlying values that motivate their political positions. But I certainly don't think conflict resolution is part of the professor's job, but rather to encourage curiosity about what we do have in common with people who hold political views different from us.
I completely agree with you on the value of curiosity and how important that is in crafting your arguments. So in my political speechwriting class, whether you want to run for office or be a speechwriter someday, it's a great thing. But it's also important, no matter what you do, whether you're a used car salesman or a doctor or any number of other professions, that you learn how to persuade people and how to get them to change their minds or follow the best course of action. And so that's part of what my class addresses too, that if you're just in politics whipping up the base on your side, right now the base on each side in American politics, if you look at Pew and Gallup, 25% over here, 25% over here, and then you've got this 50% in the middle, and you can't win an election with 25%. So it's all about how do you get those people in the middle to say, oh yeah, that's a good argument, I'll go with that. And so a lot of that is learning how to argue both sides. And the number of students in my class who got to their fourth year at UVA and for the first time in their lives had to argue the opposite of what they believed is one of the assignments in the class. Their heads exploded. One person texted me and said, crying, and it came out in the evaluations that except for the ones who were on debate teams, the ones other than them, most of the students had never had to argue the opposite of what they believed through all of high school and all of college. And that is a skill you need out in the real world. Lawyers don't get to pick who they think are innocent or guilty. There's a lot of jobs where you have to make arguments that you may or may not agree with, and students need to learn how to do that. And I think that is going to help with polarization. If you are forced to think about it from someone else's point of view, you're going to be smarter, and you're going to make better arguments for your own side.
One vignette that can illustrate Professor Cary's point is that early in my career in Congress, my boss, who was a senior senator, asked me for the 3 best arguments for a proposition he was about to speak on the Senate floor, and I readily gave them to him. He said, "What are the 3 best counters?" And that was my first exposure to opposition research. I had not prepared him for the counter arguments that folks on the other side of the aisle were invariably going to put to him. And I thought that was a crucial exercise. We now have incorporated into the Batten undergraduate class student debates. So students are comfortable.
That's great.
Trying to tease out the other fellow's argument, if only to strengthen theirs. There's a famous Mill quote that I attribute to Professor Lynch here at the university. Professor Alan Lynch says, "If you only know your own brief, you don't know your own brief. You need to know the other side's arguments as well."
Yep.
And just as a personal anecdote, we actually had an assignment in high school where we were debating the Electoral College, and our professor asked us to pick whichever side we wanted. He said, "Okay, now you're going to argue the opposite side."
Love it.
Without even giving us any heads up.
And how did you feel about that? Did it make you uncomfortable, or were you like, "Oh, this is interesting"?
It was interesting. I liked it. I liked the challenge. I thought it was cool, and I had never, like you said, it's very unique to be probed to think that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I thought it was great, but other people were not as happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially people who were very convicted in their views.
They don't like that.
They don't like
They
that
don't like
at
that.
all.
Yeah.
I tend to be more in the middle, so
I think there's a lot to be said in addition to curiosity, intellectual humility, and the ability to realize, oh, I could be wrong. There's way too many people in the world right now of all ages who think they cannot be wrong, and you can be wrong. A lot to learn.
definitely.
Yeah.
Here's a bit of a chicken or the egg type of question. Do you think that the political division that we see across the United States and in everyday life is produced by the current political dogma in academics, or is there another outside force causing it?
I would say sort of all of the above, if I could. I think our current politics is certainly causing a lot of this. I think that what's going on at a lot of the universities that we're learning lately is part of the mix. Probably the number one thing, though, is social media. And I think you look at, say, Jonathan Haidt's research of what he's looked into. It all started around 2012, especially with young people. And I think that's absolutely delighting our enemies. And I don't understand why more people aren't seeing it as a national security problem, what's going on with social media and the younger generations, because I think we've got to get our hands on it and try and turn it around. But it's a difficult task. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but that's what I would attribute it to. I don't know. How do you feel?
I agree 100%, and Haidt's research, I think, is really clear on that. I probably disagree a little bit on the role of the academy. I'm very conscious here, particularly in some of the hiring decisions we make, about the value of diversity. I can say this because I'm a Democrat, but 90% of college professors are Democrats in many fields. And so I have sought repeatedly, and I can name names, but a number of us at the university have sought to make certain that there's strong conservative voices and centrist and libertarian voices. So there's not this homogenous blue versus red game going on here. And I think there's a lot more work to be done by the academy in that realm, because you shouldn't have such an imbalance of presentation. On the other hand, I don't think it is university professors who are fueling these divisions. The divisions are fueled by social media. And there is evidence that foreign actors love to dump a little gasoline on that fire. We do bad enough stuff to each other without blaming it on the Russians. But they love it, and they revel in it. Putin does victory laps whenever we have deep divisions in our country.
So do the Chinese.
And so this division is a national security threat, and it is a challenge, an existential challenge for your generation in dealing with democracy. We're honored here to give you some final lessons as teachers, but this is your battle, and it's your future. So I think we do need an all-hands-on-deck approach to it.
100%.
So is there a light at the end of the tunnel, and do you see this problem being solved in the coming years? And if not, what steps can both students and the faculty take to fix it?
After you.
I'm an eternal optimist. I could not do my job here at the University of Virginia if I wasn't bullish about your future. So I think things are going to get better. We're facing a fraught year with deep divisions in our country and a lot of uncertainty around the world about our role. But I'm very confident that when we put our minds to it, the American people have never been defeated in our efforts to make progress. I believe universities have a major role to play in this in terms of civil culture, in terms of encouraging citizenship. And I'm really confident that with the type of colleagues we have here at the university, we're going to be able to advance these goals. But it's your fight, and we're looking for you guys to lead.
Yeah, here at UVA, there's a tremendous opportunity for UVA to be a national leader in this, and it goes back to the founding of our university and the founding of our nation. But there are so many organizations nationally that are concerned about exactly what we're talking about, who would love to come help. And it starts with things like first-year orientation and how to have a free speech component to that, and how to argue with evidence and not be name-calling and all that. We don't have that yet, but we're getting there. There's organizations like Braver Angels who will come in and do town hall debates. So it's not just Jeff Sock and Wash Sock who are learning how to debate. That becomes a regular part of the curriculum here. There's all kinds of things we could do to bring in more adjuncts like we are. Well, I guess you're a professor of practice, but we're not career academics. And there's ways that we could try and fund more people like us who could come in and give different viewpoints without a PhD. And so I think there's all kinds of things that would be very exciting and could really put UVA at the forefront of this, and I'm very excited to try and be a part of that. It's going to be great for you guys going forward.
I'm excited. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a second year, and so
Oh, good. Yeah.
we've got a little bit of time left, but
Yeah, no, I think there's all kinds of things that could still be taking place. So.
yeah.
There used to be a group on grounds called It's Up to Us about dealing with the deficit. I'm a fiscally conservative Democrat. This issue concerns me a lot. But I loved the line, it's up to us, because it is up to you guys, about the kind of society you guys want to build and the kind of civility you want in the political dialogue. So good luck, and thanks for honoring us by looking to us for guidance.
It's been an honor. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for shedding light on these issues. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you to those who tune in to Whose Views, where conversations spark change. Until next time, Vicky Salazar and Giulia Silverstein in Charlottesville. Whose Views.